Hello, everyone. For those of you who are interested in the Middle East, you have probably followed the Lebanese parliamentary elections. To talk about the outcome and its implications, I am particularly glad to welcome Hanin Ghaddar, Friedmann Fellow at the Washington Institute. Hello, Hanin.
Hi, how are you? I'm really glad to be with you today.
So am I. Very simple question to start out with. What do the elections mean for Lebanon today, and what do they tell us about the state of Lebanon?
Okay, so we noticed that at the end of the day, one major outcome came from the Lebanon's elections, in addition to other outcomes. But one of the main outcomes is that Hezbollah and its allies have lost the parliamentarian majority. And this is a big blow to the party, which kind of guaranteed its victory beforehand, because the context of elections in Lebanon really was not motivating for the people to go and vote for change, because since 2019 protests that happened in Lebanon until today, many things happened that killed the motivation in the Lebanese scene. Basically, the Beirut port explosion, the lack of accountability, the assassination of dissidents like Uthman Slim, and the collapse of the economy and rising poverty, extreme rise of poverty. So people did not really have the motivation to do that, but surprisingly, what we realized is that people realized that this is the only space to say no. And despite everything that happened since 2019, all the expression of refusal of this system, of Hezbollah, of the corrupt political elite, did not go anywhere. And this was the only chance, and they took it. People did vote for change to a certain extent. Of course, I'm not saying everybody did, but because some people decided that they're going to take this opportunity and say no, Hezbollah and its allies did lose the majority. And this is the big, big outcome. The second big outcome is Hezbollah's arms basically have lost its Christian cover and national cover. Hezbollah won the Shia seats. That's not a surprise. We all expected that. Despite the discontent within the Shia constituency, they used all sorts of intimidation, violence, and sticking carrot techniques to guarantee that. But they lost their allies, basically Gibran Bassil and the Free Patriotic Movement, which is basically Hezbollah's Christian ally and the cover for its arms, lost its parliamentarian Christian majority. Basically, they do not have the majority, the biggest block of the parliamentarians in the parliament. And the other allies that Hezbollah has, basically this Bashar al-Assad allies in Lebanon, the old guards of Bashar al-Assad in Lebanon, they all lost, most of them lost. So this is also a big indication. It's not only Hezbollah's allies lost, also Bashar al-Assad's allies fell completely hard during the elections. It was a great expression of the people of Lebanon on what that means. What that means is that today, Hezbollah is going to find it very difficult to pass any decisions they want in the parliament. They will face major discontent and major challenges in the parliament. But the best part is that the new bloc made its presence in the parliament, moved from the protests of 2019. These guys were 15 new parliamentarians now who were part of the protests of 2019, who were blocked and beaten up because they were trying to march to the parliament. Today, through elections, they made it to the parliament as the parliamentarians. This block of 15 people, these are the revolution representatives, and they are going to carry the message of the people to the parliament, and they are going to form, in addition to other traditional blocks, a major force of change. It's not going to be heaven tomorrow, and nothing is going to change drastically, but at least there is an expression inside the parliament today that represents the people and the will of the people.
Well, it's rarely heaven these days, anywhere. But so given the bad results for Hezbollah, and therefore its weakening, is there a chance the outcome could potentially spark discussions in Lebanon about Hezbollah's military arsenal and the need to disarm it?
Well, I think the first item on the agenda today is reforms and economic situation of Lebanon, right? So this is what a lot of people want to discuss today, the IMF negotiations, the banking sector, the depositors' money, you know, the daily economic issues. But we all know that these reforms did not happen before because there was a block by Hezbollah and its allies and some of the anti-Hezbollah corrupt politicians who did not really want to make any reforms. So today, this is the number one item on the agenda. And I think there has been a lot of discussion before the elections among all the anti-Hezbollah groups that after elections, there will be a discussion of the national strategy, national defense strategy. The national defense strategy by default is basically discussing Hezbollah's arms. Every time someone mentions the national defense strategy and a dialogue about the national defense strategy, Hezbollah immediately resists and make it clear that there's not going to be any kind of discussion, that this is it. So today, there will be a serious discussion of what it means to have a national defense strategy. What is the role of the Lebanese army? Can we have a parallel paramilitary force in Lebanon like Hezbollah? This is going to be on the table. I'm not saying that it's going to lead anywhere, but the discussion is going to be there. And I think the best part of this new narrative in Lebanon is that today people can talk about these things. And when you start talking about these things, it will be part of the narrative, part of the popular discussion, public discussion. And that's a great beginning for when the circumstances arrive to actually do something about it. Because the circumstances today are not ripe to do anything about Hezbollah's arms. The Lebanese people themselves cannot really disarm Hezbollah, but they can start a discussion, build a narrative, and then when the time comes, the narrative will be ready and the plan will be ready.
And so actually as a follow-up, and that's my last question, how do you evaluate the danger that Hezbollah will try and potentially use military force, or at least threatening to use it, in order to change the situation on the ground?
That is the main question today, right? So what's going to happen tomorrow? And immediately, the day the results were announced, Hezbollah immediately started to send threatening messages about, you know, like either you cooperate with us or there will be civil war. So they immediately started to threaten with civil war. And when they threaten with civil war, we know what that means. It's not going to be civil war. It means they're using their arms against the Lebanese. So today, Hezbollah has a problem with their arsenal, right? Their fighting force. And I've talked a lot about the details of this in the book that I published a couple of months ago. It's about Hezbollah and the Shia community. And a big part of it, chapter, is about Hezbollah's military force and fighting force. They have a problem. They cannot actually today start a war with Israel, let's say. This kind of war today they cannot afford because of their very weakened and disoriented and undisciplined fighting force. The fact that if they use their weapons, they will lose them. So basically today the threats of their weapons is stronger than the weapons themselves, because if you use them, you lose them, and Iran cannot restock Hezbollah's arms. So they use the threats of their weapons against external forces like Israel, but internally they can use their weapons. And we know that because they've done this before. In 2005 parliamentary elections, Hezbollah lost. In 2009 parliamentary elections, Hezbollah lost. And they have used their weapons. May 7 events of 2019, May 7 events of 2008, and then again when they in 2010 when they toppled Hariri's government, every single time they used their weapons in order to counter their loss with a national unity government, which means that they will eventually govern. They will do it again if they feel that they cannot. However, the circumstances now today are much harder for them to actually use their weapons inside Lebanon because of the public discontent against them, the fact that the economic situation and the international community watching that space. But they will not, eventually they will not say no. They will not, they will try to avoid it until it becomes necessary. They will use intimidation, they will use threats, they might use assassination, and they have done it many times before. And recently, their last assassination was last year when they killed Luqman's team, and they keep doing it until they get what they want. I'm saying this is a very high probability that their weapons or the threats with their weapons is going to be used in order to intimidate, threaten, or eliminate people who are not going to cooperate, quote unquote, with them. So this is the big issue today in Lebanon. So I think this is where a lot of pressure, international pressure, local pressure, cooperation among all the opposing blocs is needed in order to maintain that kind of resistance against this violence.
Thank you so much for this interesting conversation. And I think our viewers will deeply appreciate all of your insights. I wish you all the luck, and I hope all of the best for Lebanon.
Thank you so much. I really am very happy to have joined you, and I look forward to more of this. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Bye-bye.
Bye.